online version now doesn't open the A-frame on full screen, but it actually opens tiddlywiki. It's an index.html, which is now in the root directory of the repository, with an iframe if your screen is big enough. So this is where the demo lives now. And I have quickly, added some explanation. This is all. I quickly just type some info to. Yeah, if you do try it, it will take you to the full screen. Oh, it's need to update that link. It's actually this one. So this will trigger the full screen soon. And this stuff you can just you can just open this in locally and then enter it, and then edit it. Here you can see discover, and then if you press this red button, then it will basically you can now overwrite the index.html file of the repository, and then the documentation is updated. So it's a CMS in a HTML file, basically.
Yep.
Old school and very flexible.
Anybody can do this? Like if somebody comes and spam, will it overwrite the nice diagrams that you've made?
So anyone can press the save button, but then they will save a local copy to their hard drive. So yeah, that would basically be a fork, but there is no server connection whatsoever. So
okay.
You have to git clone the repository and then save. If you press save, you have to save it to the. So here's XRSH, and then you have to basically save it to the. What's it here? Yeah, say overwrite this index.html, and then you have to push it to Forgeo, and that's the only way to update it. So only you or I can do that.
Okay, makes sense.
I've also added a page here, development log, with the videos so far, and this is a small segue, but a very important one. I think I didn't. This is an Invidious player, and for me, this was a bit new. I didn't know about this, but there is a way to watch YouTube videos without being tracked. And this project is called Invidious, and these are basically some kind of proxies similar to a SERX, the search engine proxy. It's basically a meta viewer, so XRSH. So this is basically just YouTube, but you can now, just view it without the surveillance machine.
All right.
So I basically used this embed, and maybe at some point we can move all the videos to your website or mirror it to archive.org. We can think about that.
Yeah. Good habit to have at least embedding without all the tracking.
Mm-hmm. And the last update, which is a bit of a hilarious update, is actually if you push to this repository, XRSH, or the apps one, which is this one. Oh, wait. That link. So this one, if you push to this one or this one on Forgeo, then it will automatically push. If you check in the actions, Oh, wait, let me check this one. It's a bit more recent. So here you can see mirror to github.yaml. This is a Forgeo action, which is actually a GitHub Actions. It's completely compatible, so super cool.
Yeah.
And it just adds an SSH key, which I created. I can also send it to you, by the way, in case you need it. And it after the push, it basically adds the GitHub repo as a remote, and then it pushes to there as well. So it sort of mirrors it. This took a bit of the usual SSH plumbing to set up. And now comes the hilarious part. It turns out there is let me sign in. There is a feature in Forgeo which does this for you.
To keep the repository to GitHub synced?
Yeah, check. If I click settings here, then and of course I noticed this after I created this GitHub action.
Well, yeah, I actually know about this. When I started to transition away from GitHub, that was something I checked if it was possible. But as long as you learn to make your own custom action, it's still a worthwhile thing. So like it can be to have like multiple branches live, or like there are so many things that can be done with actions. So even if you edit something that's already supported, it's still useful in my opinion.
Thank you. You just gave me another reason to feel less bad. I also tried to come up with reasons to not feel bad about it, and there's also like I'm not a security ninja or something, but there are people who would actually prefer using SSH keys over your own credentials or your own login for GitHub. So yeah, it's still a wonderful way of doing. It's great that there's multiple ways of doing many things. Yeah. So that's my update, and it's boring and incredibly necessary to have a sort of nice starting point, because if we want to deliver milestones, then it's nice to be able to just write a small article in this tiddlywiki and reference that in the milestone, and not have it, like this wiki is also great, but there's something beautiful about having a repository, cloning it, and that the index.html is like the whole body of knowledge. There's also, last but not least, there's also a way to just do a CodePen like A-frame sort of embeds in there. So you could even potentially live code some stuff in there as an example, but that's just a bonus. So that's it. I will stop sharing my screen now.
No, I think it's important even to be able to do the project, do the milestones, but do it properly. So with infrastructure that doesn't force us to relinquish control, to give up. It's like, oh, we need to collaborate, so it means we must use GitHub, we must use a Microsoft product, we must let it be trained for some dubious AI quote-unquote solution. I mean, it's important, again, even if it feels a bit like reinventing the wheel using actions or whatever. It means you get to decide. You might still want to say, okay, well, I still prefer GitHub because whatever. But being able to use tools like Forgeo and tiddlywiki, I think it's important to get the I don't want to say no compromise, but to get to decide how the project is made, not just what it does. I think it's quite important that I don't want to use like bad shortcuts, but if you have a super nice cheap sweater and it's done using slave labor, then I think it something is off. Like you must have tools that reflect your philosophy, your ethos, the way you want to live in the world. And if it means like sweating a bit more by doing things a little bit more convoluted, while still achieving the milestone, like that can't be the only way, using the infrastructure and configuring it. But I think every like meaningful project must spend a little bit of time, some efforts in setting things right before or side by side while building the actual thing. So I think it's positive. And in terms of prototyping, it's fundamental because, oh, do we want a WebXR interface of tiddlywiki? Oh, do we want an action that push per branch so that we can maintain several branches at once? Because there is no product. It's more like the different explorations of seeing what might work and keep things that don't work so that we can come back, or someone else can come back later, say, hey, that was a dead end. Maybe now it's not anymore because of new feature, let's say eye tracking or whatever. Maybe it's still a dead end, but we want to confirm it fast. So I think having the ability to not just use the right infrastructure, but play with it so that we can tinker with the content is powerful, is useful. So I think it's nice.
Yeah, same here. And there's also in that respect, what I also like about, for example, shell script, is that this also has this sort of flexible, reproducible characteristic. Because I noticed that you mentioned the word product, and I noticed that with the product kind of thinking, I've noticed that some projects or commercial projects, they also get trapped in, for example, GitHub Actions, which also makes the whole, I call it the idea to release cycle, much slower, even though it's an automation pipeline. But I've learned that it's actually, well, even also for products, it would be much smarter. It's better to not hard code all kinds of logic into the actions, into this YAML, because it's much easier, I found it, and faster, that if you can reproduce certain steps of the pipeline by just calling a shell script. So basically you would still have a GitHub Actions or Forgeo Actions, the pipelines, but they would basically be proxying, calling out to the shell script, so that the shell script is doing the actual work. In that way, you can you also test things locally much easier. And I know there are some kind of software solutions where you can sort of mimic a pipeline of GitHub, but that's getting very convoluted. I think if you just stick to calling simple shell scripts or functions inside shell scripts, and just because I'm a bit of a shell script geek, there is a very, very cool way of doing this, and then I will end my whole bash evangelism thing. But I'm opening now a small text editor. If you have a shell script like this, and I'm probably preaching against the converted, but since this is video, I still want to do it. Like, you can do all your stuff here and it will be executed, which is great in your shell script. But what I found so incredibly powerful is that you could make a function or two, and then you would basically at the end of your shell script, you would put this in the end. And what this means, this is really cool. Like if this would be, this shell script would be called my script or iScript. Then if you do foo, let's say ABC or ABC, then the beauty is that it basically just, this basically becomes do foo, and it will basically call this function with with the arguments. So you can basically proxy into a function, and you can reuse the same shell script for various things. And also these functions can call each other. Oh, sorry, it's like this. And so it basically becomes fully, I like this term, cybernetically complete. I really like this. It's so simple and so flexible. If you can use this in pipelines, you can use it on your laptop. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, that is the end of my evangelism of shell script for today.
So I think to me, beyond the shell scripts, it's composability, that you can use one tool with another. It's a bit, I think I mentioned it before, but as like when I did my welding workshop, when I started to cut different pieces of metal and all, and listening of the teacher or saying, oh, this kind of metal for that usage, I was like, okay, but not very excited, to be honest. But as soon as I welded two pieces of metal together, like, oh, I can do a chair, a table, I don't know, really whatever, something to grill meat or. But as soon as you put couple of components together, then you can, your creativity can start to go wild, and then you can start, in my opinion, to solve problems. So here the example you give with Bash is, it makes me think of this, like being able to not just have one script and you execute it, it does one thing, but as soon as you can compose with either itself, like some function inside it calling other functions, or bigger, and in my opinion better in terms of composability, that something outside of it calls it and part of it, and you can pipe it, then again you can do so much. So it's funny because you didn't call it my script but Y script, and it also reminds me of like the Y Combinator and some of the basics of programming, that it is that it's not just like, oh, everything is like a series of lines and then they always execute this way. It's like you can say I execute that part, and under that condition that other part, and then that part called this other part, and then it becomes something. Again, this composability aspect makes it flexible and gives some really complex behavior that otherwise are not possible. It's not just executing one line after the other.
That's yeah, you really hit the nail on its head, definitely. Also, the last update I have is that I got in touch with the remember the accessibility audit, which at some point is going to happen. I got in contact with them. It's the Han University in Holland, who is specialized in accessibility and doing audits. And it's really cool. I think it's going to be very cool for XR Shell as well. I'm basically now I have sort of worked with them for XR fragments. I had to fill in a form about what the application is about and what kind of things I did to make it more accessible, plus some questions of, what I want to ask them so that I can get back a sort of report with advice and suggestions. And it's going to be more a shared exploration. So also for XR Shell, I imagine it's exactly the same, where they also want to see what what we came up with in regards to accessibility, because it's also a bit of a big gray landscape for them. There is not much to read. They said they can't really find a lot of articles about it, which well, I guess there is a lot written about it, but maybe it's more in the VRML era, or it's not really applicable to the today's devices like the Quest and the hand detection, etc., because it's a bit newer. But yeah, so long story short, I think it will be a fun exploration. And first I was a bit afraid of, doing everything wrong, but now I'm realizing that there is not really a right or wrong. It's actually very interesting for them to see, some ideas, even wild guesses. So that's a good thing.
So, at the risk of sounding pompous, I think some of the moment when I've learned the most was by not admitting that I knew nothing, because I don't think that's like self-deprecation basically, and it's just not true. We always know a little bit about, maybe not everything, but a bit of at least the thing we're interested in. So I think it's more about being humble. Like, yeah, there is so much about accessibility that is, yeah, we're probably not doing it quote unquote the right way, but as long as we're humbled enough to accept being challenged by people who dedicate their professional life at least to the topic, we're sure to learn and progress. It's going to take a strange, convoluted route because we never considered it before, but it's definitely a great one. One example on that topic was, the first time I encountered the challenge of accessibility in VR was at the WebVR W3C workshop at the Samsung HQ, I think in 2016, so a while ago, where somebody said, oh, what about people who can't see properly using VR? And I was like, that makes no sense. The one thing VR does is like putting screens in front of your face. And then the person went on to explain that, it's if we don't consider accessibility for blindness, low visibility, etc., then it's yet another cool and exciting technology that people won't have access to. And it's just terrible. Like, you go to a museum, they say, oh, we have this cool VR exhibit, and somebody who can't see properly can't enjoy it. It's just terrible. And then I started to change my mind on this, and I thought, okay, I really don't know how to do this, but it's at the very least an important challenge. And then I also discussed with others, trying to solve it, and with proper expertise in accessibility. And then a bit of the discussion we had last time using text-to-speech or using ARIA tags. There are actually ways. It's not going to be the original experience, but it's definitely going to be something. And the maybe surprise for most people is or rather when you follow such advice, let's say ARIA tags or text-to-speech, for yourself, it can also be, like, from an egoistic viewpoint, super useful because, well, maybe that day, like, you got some dust in your eyes, or your eyes are just tired and you want to keep your eyes closed, and you can still interact with it because you added an alternative medium or an alternative way to interact with information. Or, like, you're on the plane and you can't reach because you don't have 6 of space, you can only use a laser instead, and it's something that maybe you consider by switching hands. I mean, there are so many ways that it makes this kind of effort not only important, but benefiting so many more people than, quote unquote, just the people that you might not have considered initially. So I think it's a humbling experience, but it's definitely a worthwhile one.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also want to make the example of your recent escape room, which you showed. But before I jump to that, I I started to get really interested in viewing things as an experience, whether it can be in VR or on the desktop or in a book. I think it can be really useful to design an experience in such way, and also sort of think about it for yourself, that it should translate to all these different realities, to the book, the written reality, the visual one, and perhaps even an audio one. I think that's a very powerful way of thinking about an experience, also from a designer point of view. And in that sense, I really hope also that these area tags will become sort of a way for designers to annotate, also for themselves, to basically add notes and to sort of think of what they're actually creating. And I know this is possible because this year I have watched some old The Next Generation episodes of Star Trek, and I noticed I could just follow the whole story by closing my eyes. I was, like you said, a bit tired, and all the dialogues were written in a way that the name was mentioned, who they were talking to when they said something, and I start to realize, holy shit, this is designed very well. I can even enjoy it with my eyes closed. It could be a podcast, this video episode. So I could imagine this escape room of yours, like if we add area texts, and just like I did with XR fragments, to certain objects, or to, like, when you teleport something, that it will also speak the area tag on that teleportation hotspot item. Like that way we could even I think it's definitely possible to design an escape room also for blind people. So this was a very complex story to get to the escape room, but I hope it made sense. I think it's definitely possible.
It's possible, and I think, like any kind of challenge, when you look at it from the bottom of a cliff, it looks infeasible. And then when you try to just go at it, it might still be. But bit by bit, you're learning a bit what the challenge is all about. And here again, it's done not on our own, but with people who've climbed such cliffs before. And it's not like a magical solution to it, but by going again and again, doing the process, like some patterns emerge, and it's only scary when you're not humble enough to believe that others can help you. You can learn from them. Others have done it, and I'm more excited than worried. It works, but it's useful one, and again, bringing interesting challenges, and I think it's useful.